Hey everybody, it's your boy Eric Stats Anderson. I'm here to talk to you about none other than the schedule release. That's right everybody, I know it's exciting times. Yesterday we got to find out the NFL season for this upcoming year. I'm excited, I know you're excited. Here's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to give you the best, most intriguing matchups to look out for on week 1 of the NFL season. And I'm going to give you who has the most favorable schedule, but who also has the toughest schedule. So who might be that team that comes out of nowhere this year to make the playoffs? The 49ers a year ago. If you remember right, San Francisco in 2018 were 4-12, finished third in their division. And then look what happened last year. Turned 4-12 into 13-3 in a Super Bowl appearance, although they fell just short of beating the Chiefs. Took a lot of teams by surprise. I'll tell you who I think that team will be this year. Starting with our most intriguing matchups for week 1. Obviously, you got to start with opening night, as always. Opening night, Texans versus Chiefs in Kansas City. So the Chiefs will be able to hang their Super Bowl banner. They've been waiting so long to see. It's been forever. They have a good matchup against Deshaun Watson, a rematch of the AFC divisional round in which the Texans blew a 24-point lead in that very building. And the Chiefs ended up going on to win, obviously, then took care of the Titans in the AFC Championship before beating the 49ers in the Super Bowl. So, should be intriguing. Will also be intriguing to see how Deshaun Watson performs in the absence of DeAndre Hopkins, who is now an Arizona Cardinal. You got Brandon Cooks coming to the Texans. You got David Johnson going to the Texans. So it's really a new look team. So should be a lot of intrigue in that opening matchup. Now the other primetime games for week 1. Sunday night, you have the Dallas Cowboys visiting the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams get to open up that new pristine state-of-the-art stadium against the Dallas Cowboys, who have their training camps out in Oxnard, California, so should be a lot of Dallas Cowboy fans there as well, so that should be an exciting matchup. And then on Monday night for your double header, you have the Steelers at the Giants, and then for the nightcap, you have the Titans at the Broncos. So should be some good Monday night matchups, some good primetime matchups, but the one that everybody's talking about so far is the Saints hosting the Bucks. So we get the two arguably best quarterbacks of all time, Tom Brady versus Drew Brees in week 1. So that should be very exciting. Obviously, a lot of people are talking about that matchup for good reason, but I got a couple sneaky matchups that are going to be very good as well that you should watch. One of those is Chargers at the Bengals. So you get Justin Herbert, assuming that the Chargers play Herbert instead of Tyrod Taylor. That remains to be seen. We'll see how training camp and preseason plays out. But you could have Justin Herbert versus Joe Burrow week 1. That should be a very exciting matchup. And then one that I really want you to keep your eye on here. The Arizona Cardinals with DeAndre Hopkins and that new look team, that revamped team traveling to the San Francisco 49ers. That will be a fantastic matchup. It's at 4:30, just like the Saints-Bucks game is, so you might have to pick one or find your favorite sports bar, try to catch them both at the same time, or just throw it on Red Zone channel because those are going to be some can't-miss games. Now, speaking of the Arizona Cardinals, that leads me into the team that I feel has the most favorable schedule and I think has the potential to be this year's 49ers and turn a terrible season into a great season, and that is the Arizona Cardinals. I love the acquisition of DeAndre Hopkins. You pair him with the future Hall of Famer Larry Fitzgerald, who looks like he still has something left in the tank, and then you add a budding superstar in Christian Kirk to the mix, and I tell you what, this team has all the capabilities of being elite. They even stole left tackle Josh Thomas from Houston in the 3rd round of the draft. That was one of the best steals of the draft. They also added Isaiah Simmons, the star linebacker defensive player in that 1st round. I love their draft. I love their free agent acquisitions. I think the Arizona Cardinals are poised to have a great season. If you look at their schedule, I'll show you why it's favorable. I mentioned the week 1 matchup against the 49ers. That could be their coming out party on the road. They then come back home. They host a Redskins team that's kind of rebuilding. Then they host the Detroit Lions. Then they travel to the Carolina Panthers. These are all sub 500 teams from last year. Then they play at the Jets, another sub 500 team. Then they finally have a tough matchup at the Cowboys. So they have a potential to be 4-1, 5-0 going into that game at Dallas. Then they play Seattle at home, which is tough. But then they got Miami, Buffalo, at Seattle, at New England. We know New England is rebuilding without Tom Brady. Then they host the Rams. Then they're at the Giants, who struggled a year ago. Host the Eagles, San Francisco again, and end up with the Rams. So overall, I could see this team going anywhere from 10-6 to 12-4 this year if they really show out, especially in their division games. I know a tough division they play in, but we saw them split with Seattle, which they seem to do every year. Then, we don't know what the Rams are going to be this year. They, don't have Todd Gurley. He's gone. They're kind of changing things up there a bit in LA. Then can San Francisco duplicate what they did a year ago? That remains to be seen. So I like the Arizona Cardinals a lot this year. I think they can be a playoff team without a doubt. Now, the team that I think has the toughest schedule, and I know you guys are probably going to call me a homer. I know you see the flag behind me, the Kamara jersey behind me, the autographed Jameis Winston jersey, who's now a New Orleans Saint. But the New Orleans Saints have, in my opinion, the toughest schedule this year. And when I break it down for you, I think it'll be hard for you guys to disagree. As I mentioned, they open week 1 against the Bucs. Then week 2, they travel to Las Vegas, take on the Raiders in Monday night. Now you might be thinking, well, the Raiders didn't make the playoffs last year. But the Raiders were very, very formidable last year. They had a chance to actually get into the playoffs. And now, week 2, their home opener in Las Vegas, opening Allegiant Stadium, that place is going to be rocking. That is going to be a tough atmosphere for the Saints. And the Raiders are going to come out very determined to win their first ever game in Vegas. So that's a tough matchup. Then they come back home and they play Aaron Rodgers. They got Tom Brady, Raiders home opener in Vegas, place rocking. Then they come back home to take on Aaron Rodgers. Then they travel to Detroit, which is a winnable game. But then they go back home, play Teddy Bridgewater, who knows them very well. Then they travel to Soldier Field, where it's always tough to play in Chicago, and Chicago's given them fits over the years in Soldier, outdoor stadium. And in November, it'll be cold. That wind will be blowing off the lake. Then they travel to Tampa, November 8th, to play Brady again. That's a Sunday night game. Then they come back home to take on San Francisco, a San Francisco team that beat them last year in the Superdome. Then they play the Falcons, their bitter rivals, and you could throw the records out the window when they play the Falcons. In fact, that's always how it's been. They always seem to split, and in fact, last year the Falcons beat the Saints in the Superdome. Then they travel to Denver, Mile High Stadium. That game is November 29th, so it's going to be freezing cold. You got to deal with the altitude. That's the ultimate home field advantage for the Broncos. A dome team traveling to that thin air outside in the cold. Then they travel to Atlanta, so they play the Falcons twice in 3 weeks, this time on the road, coming off the Denver game. Then they travel to Philly, and we know Philadelphia is a tough place to play in December. In fact, last year, I know the Eagles were 9-7, snuck into the playoffs, but Carson Wentz was playing with next to no receiver. Now they've totally revamped that. They added Marquise Goodwin from the 49ers. They drafted Jalen Reagor. They got Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson back healthy. And of course, they already have Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. That is going to be a tough game, and the Eagles are going to be a tough team this year. Then after that, they come back home, which is good, but they're playing Patrick Mahomes and the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs. So that's going to be a tough game. Then on Christmas Day, just 5 days later, they play the Minnesota Vikings. And we know these tough games they've had with the Vikings. Obviously the Minneapolis Miracle, which just makes me sick every time I talk about that game. And then last year, what the Vikings did to the Saints in the playoffs, eliminating them in the wild card round. A lot of people thought it was an upset. And then finally, last game of the year, they end on the road at Carolina against Teddy Bridgewater. And don't forget, their offensive coordinator, who they got from LSU, who LSU got from the Saints, knows that offense. They know the system. Teddy Bridgewater knows the system. So they're automatically prepared for the Saints in that game. So when you look at it, I mean, maybe the only game you could possibly consider easy, if you can consider that, is the game at Detroit. And that's still a road game. So it is an absolutely tough schedule for the Saints. And it is going to be very hard for them to win their 4th straight division title. If they don't, I still like them to potentially get a wild card spot. But man, is it going to be tough this year on the New Orleans Saints. So that's my schedule release show. I thank you for watching. Once again, if you like what you saw, hit the like button. If you didn't like it, tell me why. Hit the comment section. If you did like it, tell me what you liked in the comment section. Tell me what content you want me to bring you, and I will make that happen. That's it for me. So everybody, thank you for watching. And don't forget, new episode of the Fantasy 4 coming out very soon. So stay tuned for that one.